here we go. Happy Father's Day to everybody. My name is Sean Mason, and I'm the lead pastor of Zion Church, Fort Washington, and I see fatherhood as an incredible privilege because not only am I lead pastor, I'm also father of two beautiful young ladies. And I am here today with some very special brothers who are fathers as well, who all see fatherhood as a privilege. But y'all, we just gonna kick it around, have a conversation just as dads. So I wanna start just by extending my appreciation to each and every one of you all and being here today and being in the presence of good, strong men, good fathers. But y'all, I just wanna kick it around and, use this time that we got to talk about fatherhood, our experiences, how we view fatherhood, how fatherhood has impacted us as well. Y'all, in Proverbs chapter 22, verse number 6, I got to pick a scripture out. Okay. Amen. It says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, one of my favorite sports to this day, even as a child, that I first watched with my dad was the sport of boxing. Y'all know if you're from this area, you're a huge Sugar Ray Leonard fan. If you from here, that was like mandatory. If you from the DMV area, you gotta be a Ray Leonard fan. So my dad was huge with Sugar Ray Leonard and Muhammad Ali. But there's something, though they boxed in different areas, there was something that they had in common, and that they had the same trainer by the man whose name was Angelo Dundee. He was an incredible trainer that was able to train and prepare these legendary Hall of Fame fighters, who many people believe are the two greatest of all time. But I liken that to also fatherhood. Just as they had Angelo Dundee as their boxing trainer, I want to talk about how we were trained, whether we were trained properly, whether we view it that way, whether we had a trainer, whether we had our fathers in our lives, and what it was that we were able to gain from that training that we could pass on as well. So I got the first question for you all, and that is, what is your father's name? I wanna go around. I'm gonna start with you, James.
My father's name is Willie McCray.
All right.
Olubunmi Jayola.
All right.
Drummond Jr.
Amen. All right, my brother.
Nathan Green.
Nathan Green. All right.
I don't really actually know my father.
Okay.
The
All
truth.
right. All right.
Right.
Thank you, Tony.
Shaiv Yalkabula.
Amen. All right. All right. Now let me say this though. So next question, what training, and I got you in mind, Tony, what training did you receive from your father? And it doesn't have to be directly. It could have been whether my father was present. So because of that, if my father wasn't present, I had to get a different trainer. And that could have been whatever influence it may have been, whether positive or negative. Anybody want to go first on that one?
I don't mind jumping in. So my father's name was Willie McCray, and I did have multiple trainers. I had my grandfather step in, as well as my stepfather. So it was more like a blended training opportunity. And I received different things from each one of them at different times in my life. But the common theme from all of them is hard work. They all were hardworking men. And that's one of the biggest takeaways that I got from them.
Man. Olu?
So what I got from my father was, for me, I think just observing. I don't think it was like when I got older, this is how you do it. It was more so I observed from the time that I could remember, like elementary, middle school, high school, what it meant. Fatherhood is more than the biology you pass down. It encompasses emotions, the social and financial responsibilities. So I saw all that, and I think that's how I took the training from my dad.
Got it. Thank you.
Wow. One thing, if I can just share that, an African proverb that states that if a child does not feel the warmth and the love of the village, he'll burn it down. And so, like my brother here, I had multiple trainers equally as well, and different methods, but the consistency was love.
Wow.
It was love.
Okay, got you. Tony?
I had a stepfather for a short period of time named John Smith that I would have to say did show me some love, even though he wasn't my father, but he showed me some love. So that was kind of instilled in me from early childhood for a short period of time, but it was there. So
That's good. Thank you, Tony.
For me, my father, Imshad Akebla, I ain't have him till I was 13. He was incarcerated. When he came home, I say in a sense, he taught me what he knew, considering the circumstances, the way he grew up. There's no right or wrong. Like I say, he taught me what he knew about that part.
And I think that's vital. When you say he taught me what he knew, give y'all an example. With my dad, I grew up with my dad, had both parents in the household. When I got old enough to drive my first car, when I got my first car, one of the first things he taught me was how to change a tire, and how to change the oil, right? Now, when I got around my peers or others who were my age as well, I saw that they knew how to change a tire and change the oil differently. Now that didn't make the way my dad showed me incorrect, but I learned another way from somebody else whose father taught them how to do it. So now I got two different ways. In some cases, my dad probably go watch it. I thought they were taught a little better, if you get what I'm saying. It was a little simpler, the way that they had it. But I think it does lend to my next question. How do you feel about your father? And I want to highlight when we were growing up, when we were the child that the fathers had to train, or what was the influence we had? And it could be any emotion that comes to mind. James, I'm gonna go back to you.
I think I have two perspectives, right? So when I was younger, I didn't know what to think about my dad. I know he seemed like he wanted to be there, but a lot of times he wasn't. But I never really focused on him not being there because I had my grandfather there. So he was a safe haven. I jumped around households for a while, dealing with some custody issues with my parents, my grandparents, and my grandparents stepped in. So I was never without guidance, but like the brother here said, at 13, my stepfather got out of being incarcerated, and I questioned his presence. Like, what can he teach me? He was locked up. I don't know this man from Adam, but when I tell you he came in with an assignment and executed it, in my opinion, perfectly. He came in and drastically changed my life.
Oh, wow.
And I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah.
I mean, he just jumped right in and taught me quite a bit.
Can I ask you, up until 13, did you have communication with your father? Was it like, man, he's a voice on the phone, or how were those, your formative years in regards
A little bit of both. So he was a voice on the phone. He was a type of dad that he missed a lot of birthdays. He missed a lot of milestones, but if I called and said, hey, I got into a fight, he'd show up. If I said, hey, I need you for this, he'd show up. But that was few and far between. And again, I never held a grudge, but it did make me question, like, why aren't you here? What are you doing? I know he also had other kids, but they weren't getting more time than I was. So my questions were, why aren't you here? What are you doing? What else is so important that you aren't here with me and my sister?
Wow.
Right? So,
yeah. Would you say that during those years that maybe anger, would that have been a familiar emotion for you growing up with, the distance and the absence of Pops when you were coming up?
I wouldn't say anger, more confusion.
Yeah.
Again, with my grandmother in the household, she was a praying woman. Right. So she was always good at just keeping us calm, reminding us that, we're important, letting us know that no matter what, we have them to be with us, to cater to us, So I never felt angry.
Gotcha.
But just, why not?
I'm sure. Thank you, Jay.
No worries.
Yeah.
Mike, can I come to you next?
Okay, all right.
I'll
Can
let
you
you
repeat
in,
that
man.
question? Because I got lost in the brother.
Yeah. And what it was is, how did you feel about your father growing up?
Wow. Felt good up until he and my mom separated. And that was up until about 13. And then it was on and off. But I would say for the most part, he showed up. Speeches, things that I had going on. But I do believe I missed some key elements that the village was able to shelter and reinforce. But sometimes we, in spite of that, we still have a tendency to fall through the cracks. And so I felt good, even in a space where this was when my mom was getting ready to pass. And he was there. As she took her last breath, the respirator ceased to breathe, and he was there, and he moved to the side. He was on her left, and I was on her right. So as she was transitioning, he allowed me access into how he loves my mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah.
And that shifted our relationship.
Yeah, yeah, that symbol, man, that was incredible, yeah. I think it was almost,
thankful for that.
yeah, you obviously hold that illustration to this day. How old were you at that time, Mike? And I'm sorry to hear of Mom's passing, you know, my condolences.
It was, that moment was about almost 30 years. 30 years, almost about 30 years.
Okay, got you, man. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, Lou, how'd you feel about your pops growing up?
I think that's a tough question for me to answer, because Nigerian background. So if you know anything about Nigerian men who were born in Nigeria, the way they think and the way they structure their family is totally different. They come here to like grind and make sure they send money back home, and then when they start their own family, that they're taken care of. So when you ask that question, you know, out of like, just trying to process it, for me, I'm appreciative because I'm from Cali. So I'm not even from the DMV.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah. I'm from California. So I'm from Carson. And if anybody knows like the LA area, so like
LA, yeah.
You guys heard of Compton? Okay.
Never heard of it.
So I lived in Carson, and if you walk 5-10 minutes, you know, to my left, you in Compton. So yeah, so to me, the reason why I said I'm appreciative, I grew up with some kids who didn't have fathers. So I would look at them and say, well, I guess I got it good. But the reason why I feel like there's a past 21 for me, there's a disconnect between me and my dad, because I feel like the emotion that you usually get from your dad, you don't get it. I think my dad was just too militant, because my grandfather was a police officer. So everything was so strict, you know? It was like, I'm gonna tell you to do this and you do it. But there was no in between, like trying to say, I don't like this, you know? Yeah, like my voice wasn't heard as a kid, high school, college, you know? So but all in all, I'm appreciative.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Can't complain
That's
too
your
much.
word.
Yeah, I'm sticking to
Okay,
that one.
Okay. Now, Tony, understanding totally, you know, the upbringing, even with the absence of a father, with, you know, your stepdad, John Smith, being in there, still tell me about, even in those times, how did you feel about your father?
I didn't feel good, you know, because, you know, we all needed our dad, especially, you know, the males, and growing up in a city. And of course, you know, my stepfather wasn't my real father, but then I had other siblings too, so he wasn't our dad, so he did some, and, you know, the best he could, I think. But, you know, you need your dad, man, and to not show up and your dad live in the same city, live in the same, you know, but don't come around, don't care, and so I didn't feel good about that, and still don't feel good about that fact. That is not, you know, cool.
Man, I got a follow-up question for you, but I wanna let my mind go right here, but I'm gonna come back, because that's gonna lead into our next question. How'd you feel about your dad growing up?
For me, it wasn't negative feelings. Loved him. Throughout this time, my mom would take me to see him here and there, talk to him over the phone. But I will tell you, when he came home, I was fired up. I ain't want to see him, I ain't want to talk to him or nothing.
Right.
But with a fatherly love, he never gave up on me. Yeah. So it lasted for about a year. And then I eventually warmed back up to him, and we built unbreakable bond. Yeah. Literally, but that just showed his love for me as a father. He never gave up on me. He said, you know what, I'm gonna give him a little bit of space.
Right.
And it worked. I came right back around to him. But growing up, it was everything. Like I said, when he came home, I gave him the blues. I gave him the blues. He probably said, right. What happened? He probably said, what happened?
So with that, that's gonna lead to my next question, y'all, is when I talked about and used the example of the trainer, and whether we know it or not, whether it's distance between, was this absence of our father, whether our father was in the house, one way or another, it trained us. And my question is, how did it train you in the position that you are now in? How did it prepare you to be a father? Because there could have been things that we saw when we was younger, say, man, I'd never do that. I can't wait to have kids, I'd never do that. Or I'll never be this way like my dad. Or maybe it was some influences where you're like, you know what? I hope I can be this way like how my dad was. But Tony, I'm gonna come back to you, because it looked like you was eager to jump in there.
You hit the nail on the head for me when you said what I will not do and how I'm not gonna be. And that was that absent father. So that was my teaching and my training that I didn't realize at the time that's what it was. And made me say, if I ever have a child, I'm gonna always be the best father I can, be present, and that was my training. The opposite of the good part of, but it was good eventually, but yeah, that was my training. And it just really, I didn't realize it at the time, but you hit it right straight, because you would think the negative part of a situation, it doesn't matter, but actually, the negative part was the positive part for me, I feel.
And there's a quote, man, you hit something for me, Tom. There's a quote, and you all may have heard it, that children live what they learn. And I think automatically we assume that, or we need to be very careful that we show our children X, Y, and Z the perfect way, the right way every time, because they're gonna learn that. But I have a counter to that there are some things that how we lived or what we saw growing up as kids influenced us in the opposite direction. Just like Tony said, there are some things that our parents did or our father did where we like, you know what, I'm not doing that. My dad may have been a great dad, but he was a heavy drinker. You may have said, I never touch alcohol a day in my life because I saw what it did. I saw how it affected me. I saw how it affected the household. Or maybe my dad smoked cigarettes. You may have never touched a cigarette in your life. That doesn't ensure because I grew up seeing that, because I lived that, this is what I learned to do. No, I think in many cases, they were cautionary tales and influenced us and even drove us to do the opposite. And where this all worked out to where there was good that came out of it, right? To say, hey, I lived this, or I was this way, or I may have grown up a certain way. Or some people may say, man, my living circumstances were really, really bad growing up. So when I grew up, it drove me to be more educated, to be more successful, for me to not be able to have my children and my offspring go through that. So I think that's something that maybe, that's a quote that we say loosely, children live what they learn, which is true. I'm not combating that at all, but I'm saying there can be a positive effect where all of these things work together, where all of a sudden there was good that came out of it. And I was very intentional about being that way. Anybody got an example of that? What I just said, want to jump on that?
I'll jump right on in, yeah. I think to that point, my father, when he was on the outs, it was because of a lot of the drinking and the womanizing, and the absence became an influence, as you say. It was this influence, and so therefore there were some things that I began to do and fall into, sipping on some beer, and then from beer some cognac, and then from cognac, you ripping and running. And so you get lost in that. You get lost in that. And it wasn't until July the 29th, 1998, where some things turned around, where God transformed some things. You know, and I remember that's when my mom had passed, and it was like a few months had passed, and I had a rock moment, boom. And I felt that I was losing my mind. And they say insanity, there's a hairline fraction. Well, I think that fraction of hair slipped on over, no pun intended. And so therefore, that's where I felt the grace and the love of God grab me back and filled me with his spirit and began to prepare and clean me up. But even before that, my father came back in, and what I saw him go through is he drank all my life up to that point, but I saw a deliverance in his life. And as a result of the deliverance in his life, I caught that thing. I caught it. And God began to deliver and move in my life equally as well. But what was done influenced my behaviors.